Is the spike in people making bold professions in Christ indicative of a veil being lifted in society? In the past several years, we've seen everyone from a Russell Brand to a Justin Bieber, Jordan Peterson, and everyone in between make bold, overt professions of faith in Jesus. And not just faith in Jesus, but actually changing aspects of how they would normally conduct their lives. Is this indicative of a bigger shift in society? Is this indicative of something beyond that? Is this indicative of a potential revival or awakening that's happening? Well, someone that's close to one of these people who've made pretty bold professions recently is a friend of mine, Jonathan Peugeot. And he said that this is something connected to an unveiling. All right, so let's check this out.
Well, one of the things, though, that's amazing about let's say, the moment that we're in terms of the meaning crisis is that I think that, there are multiple causalities. And in some ways we're following patterns that are bigger than us. Like it's not just about this or that person doing this or that or believing this or that or Jordan Peterson or Richard Dawkins or anything.
Yeah.
It seems like, in some ways there was a veil pulled over people's eyes for a few centuries, where it was, for many people, it was impossible for them to perceive the meaning and the deep meaning and the deep realities of spiritual existence. And so they could understand it in a kind of, how can I say this, like a mythological way, where they understood the images. Like we talk about angels, but it's like, right, so these beings that are in the heavens, and some people continue to believe it in that way, like in an almost, I wouldn't say superstitious way, but a very simple, like a simple kind of believer's way, which is fine for a lot of people. But the intellectuals stopped knowing what these things were about, and it's like, okay, so
Okay, so he uses the language, a couple of things to point out, of veiling, but then he goes on to say a few centuries. So it's interesting that if you think about what he's saying, that sometimes God is so outside of time that something being veiled for a few centuries still falls within the parameter of God's providence and sovereignty.
Yeah.
Right? And so what he's getting at is the Enlightenment and the Renaissance and all those things that happen where, as society became more secularized, religion had less and less of a focus, and you had the spike of philosophy and all these different things. And so, which by the way, I would argue the Protestant Reformation led to a lot of that in the West. And so it's an interesting point that he's making, that now we're not just conceptualizing these things in simple terms or in abstract terms, that there seems to be a shift happening in terms of more and more people coming out as Christians, and society overall seems to be being jolted and shifting.
So God comes to the earth, and then he walks in, and then he dies, and then I'm going to heaven. Like, what are these causal? Like, this is a crazy thing.
Yeah.
But what's happening, I think, is that in some ways there's something in the culture, there's something happening in general, which is breaking apart this veil, like opening the veil, and so that people are now able to perceive what it means for there to be agencies beyond human agency, what it means on us, like what it looks like for agency to act on humans, what it means for someone to be rid.
Agencies beyond human agencies. What is he getting at? He's getting at that people are, for the first time, starting to acknowledge that there's a realm beyond this one. There's a realm beyond the physical, that whether you're looking at all the terrible things that are happening, whether you're looking at everything that happened with the corruption of certain institutions post 2020, that there's a different realm. Now we're seeing more of the UFO stuff come out, and if we're looking at it from a purely materialist worldview, none of that makes sense. None of that makes any sense, right? In terms of the technology even being able to exist. So then it goes, well, wait a minute, but yet Christians in the church have been all along saying that there's another realm, and that it's more plausible that what we're seeing is folks from another realm, less than folks from another galaxy.
Yeah.
Right. And so Jonathan is cooking right here.
What it means on us, like what it looks like for agency to act on humans, what it means for someone to be ridden by a demon or to be affected by these spiritual powers that influence us, right? And I think, and you can see it breaking, like even with C.S. Lewis, you can kind of see it happening in the 50s. It's already there's little cracks, but now it's like opened up.
Come on. Whew, I got goosebumps. He said we started seeing it with C.S. Lewis in the 50s, which, if you don't know who C.S. Lewis is, I mean, arguably the most important, famous apologist of the last century.
Yeah.
Right. He wrote things like Chronicles of Narnia. He has a fire book called Screwtape Letters, which is one of my favorite books. He wrote Mere Christianity. And C.S. Lewis shifted a lot of this framework that you compartmentalize faith over here, but the institutions and education, all these things are over here. And so there's been this jolting that's happened where it's spurred on probably by a faith, by the faith of C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien. And now we're starting to see it even more materialize within the Jordan Petersons, within the Russell Brands, within people that are, it seems like every other month there's a new person that comes out that's overtly Christian and is not weird in the sense that they're getting involved in some fringe group, but they're just like trying to walk through this.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Dangerous because most people are not going to go Christian. Most people are going to go weird, stuff.
New age.
Because all of a sudden it's like, oh, I have access to this. So let's take psychedelics. I have access to this. So let's try to have mystical visions of whatever, like completely without any discernment. And we're looking down a dark path mostly, I would say.
I think so. And
pause it. So it's interesting. He went, we're looking down a dark path. I see it as the opposite. I see it as like, even if people are dabbling in the dark stuff, eventually the dark stuff will get you to a place of like, yo, this is a counterfeit. Right?
Yeah, I was thinking besides the like baby sacrifice of the god of Moloch of the Bible days, when you're reading the Old Testament and it's like, oh, it's kind of cool, although there's so many people that worship false gods, at least they acknowledge there was God and they were looking for something to worship. And so it's like while there are dark options, it gives me hope that there's a possibility that they can be brought to the light because they're already searching for something that's beyond the human realm, right? And so it's like, okay, cool. It's dark, but hopefully we can reel them in. But if you're starting from like, oh, there's nothing and it's all just nothingness, then it's way harder to like lay a foundation for that.
Absolutely. But you got to remember that even if they're, so if we're going from materialist to there's something beyond this realm, that's already a W. But you go deeper and you go, oh, and then some of these folks are going to go try psychedelics and drugs and witchcraft and all this stuff. But what happens to the people that try those things? After the incredible success of our Bless God prayer journal, many of you guys began to ask for something that had a planner. And so we combined our Bless God prayer journal with a brand new leadership planner that jam-packs the same things from our prayer journal with a planner, goal setting, leadership meeting, and notes. With the next pages, you can see different sections right along here of this leadership planner where you can start out with actionable goals, 12 months of calendar, our original prayer journal prompts, our leadership journal with the proven problem solution framework, and of course, just free write notes. This leadership planner is based off of Matthew 25:14-30, which of course is the parable of the talents. The vision of the planner is to help you make the most of your time, talent, and treasure. Head over to blessgod.shop and get yours today. All right, I'll see you over there. Peace. Yes, some of them end up losing their minds, but how many Kat Von D's and folks that practice witchcraft and folks that practice New Age spirituality are coming over and being like, yeah, I did that. That stuff is real and it's wicked and it's dark and you don't want any part of that. I'm following Jesus now. Like we're seeing more and more people come out and saying that, I feel like, within the conversation of aliens, within the conversation of like the folks in some of these quote unquote conspiracy lands. And so I think I don't see it as dark. I see it as like, there's a tide turning. And yes, the world is dark, but oftentimes when it's the darkest, then like revival and awakening happens.
It's fascinating. I mean, I have a few things to say. Number one is I think that a lot of people don't realize how much we are subject to the thoughts of philosophers who have been dead for a century or two. Mm-hmm. How much they affect culture, how much we think their thoughts without even knowing that they've been passed on to us from them. Wow. Which is a normal human thing, right? But when the thought is not Christ anymore, it becomes other things. But also, I think that there's a lot of people who discovered, as you said, like they take psychedelics or they get into the occult or Wicca and they discover this stuff is real. Right? They discover like, this is real. A thing happens when I do this.
Yep.
And that can be very intoxicating.
Yeah, of course.
And there's a sense of like, this is real. And I've been told all my life it wasn't real. And wow, it's real. But it's like, okay, yes, it's real, but it may not be good.
Come on.
It may not have your best interests at heart.
Come on.
Yes, you're talking to a spirit. What is that spirit? I mean, it's suddenly all of these things in the scriptures about test the spirits. Wow, how
Yeah, it becomes
applicable is
pretty
that old stuff? It's so applicable, you know.
That's
Yeah,
funny.
I think there's like I like to talk about enchantment a lot, which is an interesting word.
Pause it.
I
So yeah, I mean, it's exactly what we just said.
Yeah.
It's exactly what we just said. So is it a net positive that people are dabbling in wickedness and darkness that's not good for you, and then through the door of that type of suffering and disillusionment coming to faith in a biblical framework? Is that a net positive or is that a net negative? I don't know. That's a good question. I don't want people dabbling in the occult and dealing with demonic stuff. But if they land where Kat Von D landed, I mean, all things work for good for those who love God and are called according to his purpose.
Yeah.
Right now, I think we would agree that that's pre-salvation as well as post-salvation.
words don't always mean what they etymologically suggest they mean, but I like to still push them in that direction anyway. And I think that's because there's a little J.R. Tolkien inside me saying, do it, you know, you want to do it. So like enchantment, right? It means to sing into something, literally singing in and chant, which is probably a little bit more obvious for you in French, you know, because chanter is just sing, right? But that there's a sense of this sort of ritual action that a person takes that then defines the story that they're in and tells them how to live in that story and, affects them. But there's dark enchantment.
Oh yeah.
Right. Like there's evil spirits. And I mean, no matter how someone wants to conceive of them, if they can conceive them in the classic sense of a dark looking angel with bat wings or whatever, as a demon, or you can say, vast cosmic intelligence that is coming on us from the top and is leading a whole society with a spirit. Like, I mean, however you want to conceive of it, there's a reality that we are, and I think this is where, I mean, I'm not deeply read in philosophy because that was just never my thing, but I know about the sense of the naked Cartesian soul, this idea of, as Charles Taylor calls it, the buffered self, right? Like that's the way we think of ourselves. And then we discover, wait a minute, I'm actually permeable.
Oh yeah. That's
dangerous and exciting and interesting. And I don't know, talk about that a little bit. Like, what does it mean to be permeable beings in the midst of a crisis of meaning? Or like, Charles Taylor, I want to talk about this question of the age of authenticity that he describes too in his stuff. Like it seems like everyone's heading for try to be as authentic as possible. What's the saying? You do you. Yeah. Right. Isn't that all about like whatever it is you are, just go ahead and be that.
Age of authenticity, you do you. He's cooking. And let me just stop before we play Jonathan's. Somebody pointed this out. What I am not saying is that you should go the route of the occult to land where Kat Von D landed.
Yeah.
That is not what I'm saying. I'm saying
the Bible.
That you could avoid the heartache by listening to a Kat Von D who tells you, I've gone there, I've done it, I've experienced it, it's darkness, don't do it. Jesus is better. That's what I'm saying. But I'm saying there's also certain people that are not going to listen. And they're going to go do that stuff. And so one, I think she serves as a cautionary tale to help people avoid that. Massive W. Two, God is redeeming and rescuing. God is still in the business of saving people.
Yeah.
Even people who have done and went the route of some darkness, God is still in the business of saving people and redeeming and rescuing people. Praise God for that. That's what I was getting at. I'm not saying that people are gonna need to go that route. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that there's people that are coming out of that are sharing the cautionary nature of that.
But nobody seems to know who they are.
It's not a real authenticity. It's because we live in it's almost like an inverted authenticity, because the you do you is actually usually means something like whatever whim you have, you act on that whim. It's like, that's not you. You're not your whim. You're not your desires. You're not your thoughts. And that's what traditional, not just orthodoxy, but almost every single traditional religion will tell you that. It's like, you're not that feeling. You're not your thought. That you are. There's something behind that. There's intelligence. Like that would be the word that we use in the West, or the nous, or there's something behind which is beyond all this noise, you could say. It's not that the noise doesn't participate in you. It is a manifestation of you, but it's not, you're not that. And so we have this problem right now, which is that people are looking for spirituality, but they confuse all the levels. It's like we just lost the wisdom. And so they confuse like some experience or some feeling or whatever. I mean, we've been misled for so long, even all these German theologians who talked about religious feeling, like as if that's what religion is about, And so we're kind of messed up, because so it's like the veil is being torn, or the veil is being opened up again, and all of a sudden people are able to see or to participate in these spiritual influences, but we've lost the normal hierarchy that the ancient world used to be based on. And so people don't know how to differentiate a demon from an angel. They don't know how to differentiate something which can still cause a kind of ecstasy, like
Woo!
You can fall into a trance if you go to a rave, like, and you can kind of enter into a spirit and then completely lose yourself in a rave. But that's not the equivalent of taking communion. It's not the equivalent of doing a Jesus prayer, although both can lead to types of ecstasies,
Dang, he's cooking. That was good. I think he's spot on, and I think the issue with what all of that is that, and I hope people will objectively examine this in themselves, is that now we're seeing more and more people acknowledging that there is a spirit realm, there is a realm beyond the physical. And if you're truly, really objective about that, you shouldn't just go down the realm that allows you to have no accountability, no standard, and no absolute truth. If you see it and then you're like, well, okay, cool, there's a realm out here beyond the physical, awesome. Now I just want to pick a path that makes me not have to change, not have to grow, not have to submit to anything.
Mm-hmm.
That is what New Age spirituality ultimately is.
Yeah.
Right? You are one with the universe. God is the universe. You are one with the universe, therefore you are God. Very pervasive, subtly in things that seem like the light. I've repeatedly criticized the Mr. Morale album by Kendrick Lamar and the Eckhart Tolle all over that. That's what's being propagated by a lot of the stuff that you're seeing. And it comes off like an angel of light, but it's actually really, 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 really dark. Right. And so I think that pointing that out, I think is so important. And it's so important to note that is dangerous, and that is a counterfeit to the truth that you are not the universe. The universe is not God. You are created. There is a creator, that you are sinful and flawed, and the creator is perfect, and that left on your own devices, the consequence for your trajectory and your choices in life is death. Yet in that, this creator decides to engage with you and deal with that issue, and that's ultimately through the story of the gospel, right? Mm-hmm. Which is Jesus comes, lives the life we couldn't live, dies the death we should have died. The hero of the story dies for the villains. The creator is willing to lay his life down for his creation so that there could be reconciliation and restoration. That's an incredible picture, and it's not just a story, it's actually true, as C.S. Lewis so brilliantly pointed. And so anyway, I appreciate John